Good morning and welcome. I should be like a real YouTuber and be like, all right, hello everybody. But no, we're just gonna start. What happened? We're just gonna start. Everybody's there, right? Okay. Now, this is very interesting, right? So this is gonna be the creator gets to work. Namaste, Shivaramchi. So Brahma. Okay, so here you can just break right in. This is chapter 10 in part 3. What happened next? Vidura eagerly inquires. What offspring did Brahma, the grandsire of the world, produce? Now, offspring doesn't just mean children, but it means products. Like the offspring of the Apple Corporation is an iPhone. So, what offspring, what beings and things, etc., did Brahma, the grandsire, the ultimate creator of the world, produce from his mind and body? From his mind and body. Very interesting, right? Maitreya, who had not forgotten Vidura's many questions on these subjects, replied, when this vision of the all-attractive withdrew, Brahma followed his instructions and returned to his practice of mental self-discipline for another 100 celestial years. So, that means that the lifespan that we heard about before, remember it said that Brahma practiced this yoga for a lifespan? We were debating for a moment or two about what that translates into human years. So this is a hint that he meditates for about 100 celestial years, which is 36,000 of our years. It's kind of a long yoga class. Then this discipline centered him within himself. It was very important to be centered if you've ever done any kind of, I don't know, I used to do a little Chinese stuff like Tai. What the heck was that stuff called? Bagua, Qigong, and that stuff. Yeah, it's all about having your center, right? And when you have your center, then you're strong. So it's the same thing emotionally, mentally, everything. When you're centered, you're strong. When you're off center, you're not strong. The thing is, Bhagavan is the center. The original consciousness is the center. When you're centered on Bhagavan, you're strong and ready to go. So in the yoga, Brahma is fixing himself on Bhagavan. And when the yoga is done, he's completely centered. This discipline centered him within himself, making him, this is great actually, now I'm getting to know all of you. All these names mean something. Discipline centered him within himself, making him very wise and powerful. He then looked upon the destructive wind that shook the lotus on which he sat. So you remember that? When Brahma was born, there was a storm all around. Then the cosmic ocean had whirlpools and waves, and those whirlpools and waves were making the lotus rock back and forth and shake and be very terrifying. Remember that? That's what part of the reason why Brahma was, like grabbing onto the flower, because it was rocking, shaking back and forth. So the first thing that he did after he finished his yoga was look at that situation. With his newfound mental power, he calmed the wind. So he used the force, Luke. He's got mental power. The mental substance is the fundament to all the physical substance. Now go back and think about how the universe evolved. You learned about that, right? It comes from conscious beings wanting things to identify with, so they produce this identity thing called a hankara, identifier, and then they develop intellect. What do they develop next? They develop mind, which is going to be their desires. It's it's the machine that works with their desires to act and the feelings that they get from the results of their action. And then they develop the intellect, right? So the intellect is inside the mind. The mind is inside the identity. Then the intellect is going to interact with the basic building blocks of nature to produce space, air, fire, water, and earth. Solid, right? Solid things. So that means that the solid thing, the tangible things are held within the intellect, which is held within the mind. If you have mental power, then you can change the physical things. If you have physical power, you can also change the physical things, but you can't change the mental things. If you have mental power, you can change the mental things, which then changes indirectly the physical things. Hi, Paula. So, because Brahma, by doing his yoga, he gained immense control over his mind. When he had immense control over his mind, he could use it to affect the physical world. Hey, Will. So the first thing that he did was, he's like, well, we don't need this storm to be all over the place. We're not gonna start creation going in a destructive situation. So the first thing Brahma needed to do is get rid of this lingering power of destruction. So he simply looked at it and concentrated on it and made it go away. So with his newfound mental power, he calmed the wind and thus settled the waters. In the absence of that destructive gale, the lotus upon which Brahma sat began to blossom in all directions. So that in that destructive gale, the lotus is fighting for life. It's getting battered back and forth. But he finally calmed the world, and then the lotus could just be peaceful. And when the lotus was peaceful, it started to blossom. When it started to blossom and bloom, he thought, I understand. I can use this lotus as the raw material to restore the destroyed worlds. So that's the basic relationship between the lotus and the universe. And it was actually, that was already stated. If you pay a lot of attention, or like when you watch a movie once, you can go back and watch it again and you see other things. When you hear the Bhagavatam, the first time you'll miss 80% of it, 90% of it. And the second time you go back, you'll catch another 10% or something. And then you catch another 10% the third time. So if you went back to the stories that we already went over, you would maybe catch the point that it said that Vishnu put the potential structure of the entire universe into the lotus flower. And so now at this point, Brahma realizes that. He says, this lotus is getting big. In the absence of the destructive force, this lotus is getting bigger and bigger. I can use this. This is going to supply me all the materials that I need. And that's why the whole universe is intimately related to Brahma's lotus. And it's a lot of mystical descriptions of the universe will describe different realms and aspects of the universe as different parts of the lotus, because they're created from different parts of the lotus. And since they're being created from that, they must have some metaphysical or some kind of relation to the part that they were created from. Okay, so Brahma says, great, I can use this lotus as the raw material. I got nothing else. The only thing that's out there is cosmic wind and cosmic water, which I can't even work with. But I got this lotus flower, and yay, it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, so I can use this to create the stuff I need to create. Hey, Miss G. Hey, talk. Okay, great. Inspired to work for the all-attractive, which is a key thing of Brahma. He's always inspired. He entered the central whirl of the lotus and began partitioning it. The whirl is that's what they call it, that yellow thing in the middle. He entered into it. It's a very big lotus. He entered into it and he starts partitioning it. Now it's going to explain how he partitions it. First, he separated 3 great divisions. Then he subdivided those into 14 and more further subdivisions. So what are they talking about? What is he getting started on building right now? It's like if you drive around and you see all of a sudden a bunch of trees are knocked over and a bunch of mountains has been, right, Willem? That's like your area. A bunch of mountain has been flattened, or terraced. They're going to build houses on there. You know that feeling? That's like the stage that Brahma is at, where he's partitioning things. He's making the lots. What do you think these are? What's this? What is he making? He makes these 3 lots. And then from those 3, he makes 14. Ayush has classes of beings. But no. You can't create beings. I mean, Brahma could exist on the lotus. I guess he could create a couple of other beings that were capable of doing that. But before creating beings, you need to... What do you need? Before you can have a family, you need a house. You need a place to live. So the first thing that Brahma works on is the place, the physical place in which the beings will live. So the 3 divisions is the 3 worlds. No. 3 worlds. So the Bu, we've generally referred to them as Bu, Bhuva, and Swa. The main place for existence, and then the place that's a little bit above it, that supports it from above, and then Swa, the far off place that it ultimately comes from and ultimately goes back to. So that's the 3 main partitions that he makes, is the basic lot, the construction lot. The construction lot for the 3 worlds. And then your bigger hint, I mean, you should have got this. And then he divided those 3 into 14. There's 14 realms. We even talked about that before. Paula has an interesting question. It wants to know if the destructive force is kind of the reason for the creative force. If you look at the structure of the universe that we went over yesterday, or the way reality is structured, Vishnu is sattva, and sattva means existence, and then because sattva is not shuddha, which means that it's not situated right, then it's trying to adjust to find its proper situation. And that adjustment, the need of sattva to adjust itself, is the existence of Brahma and Shiva, is the existence of the creative force and the destructive force. So if you like, you can look at it and say the destructive force is the inspiration for the creative force. That's fine. But actually it's existence which is the inspiration for both the creative and the destructive force. And it's the desire to reach new conditions in existence is what is the driving force behind both creation and destruction. All right, I'm going to try not to get... Got it? So he divides the central lotus into the 3 portions that are related to the place where all the creatures are going to exist. And then he subdivides that into 14. Now we get this little section. Vidura has a question. Vidura says, "Hey, Maitreya, I got a question. Time was the crucial factor during the natural evolution that took place prior to Brahma's coming into being." So now, this is called Visarga. Remember we said there's 10 subjects in spiritual education in Vedic culture? The first subject was Sarga and the second is Visarga. This thing that we're just started with Brahma partitioning the lotus flower is Visarga, the subsequent creation. The one that came before this was the Sarga, the fundamental development of things, the fundamental coming into being is Sarga. So Vidura's question is, the main force in the Sarga was time. Time is the thing that caused this element to evolve into that element, and then evolve into this and then that, and to cause this to evolve in response to it, etc. So this right here actually is really interesting stuff, because we're gonna start talking about time, and so you're gonna get a definition of what time is and its components and everything. So he says time was the crucial factor during the natural evolution that took place prior to Brahma coming to being. So another way of separating Sarga and Visarga is Sarga is natural evolution and Visarga is guided evolution. Sarga will enable the universe to support Brahma, and then Brahma will guide the things into more and more different forms. So anyway, he asked, you mentioned several times that it is a form of Hari that performs incredible deeds. You've said a few times that time is a Shakti or a form of Hari. So please describe and define time, Prabhu. So Maitreya is going to reply. Good question. He says time is a tool of the original person. It is a spiritual substance composed of his own power, which facilitates the increasing enjoyment of bliss. That is a definition of time. Time is a tool that a person has. The ultimate time is from the ultimate person. Time is a tool of a person, of consciousness. Time is a tool of consciousness, and it's part of what consciousness is. Time is a composition of consciousness's own Shakti, own power. One of the effects of consciousness is time. Think about this clearly and simply, and you'll get it. It's not going to just be something that people on drugs talk about or people get high and talk about. It's a very sensible thing. Consciousness means you experience something. If there's no such thing as time, then you can't experience more than one thing. You can't change what you're experiencing. And that's pretty boring. So consciousness, part of the power of consciousness is to experience the next thing, experience another thing. So that's what time is. Time is the ability of consciousness to experience some new state, new, to keep things new. So time keeps pulling new moments, we call them moments, into consciousness as present. So that's how Maitreya defines what time is. It's a tool of consciousness, the original person. And it's spiritual, it's consciousness itself. It's composed of consciousness, and its purpose is to facilitate the increasing enjoyment of bliss. Okay? Because if you didn't have time, you would get bored right away. If there was no time, if the present couldn't update, then you'd get fantastically bored for eternity. So in order to make it be exciting, make existence exciting, time exists. Cool, right? Now, just Jennifer, time is also going to pair with, so the ability to cause time to change means your intention or will is going to make time move in a certain direction. Now, if your will is off kilter, or if later on you don't like that will, you're still stuck with that momentum that you set in motion. And that's why down the line, you feel like you're not in control of time. So Melissa, avidya actually makes time work. Brahma actually said this to Vishnu. Like 3 days ago, we read it. He said to Vishnu is that time is supposed to bring good stuff. But because people misuse their will and activity, time actually brings them not their best stuff. And then eventually it brings ends to things because they get sick of them or they don't deserve them anymore. Right, April, it's good stuff. This is very good stuff. Space and time is only related because one of the basic ways of experiencing time, you experience time as a change. One of the basic ways of experiencing time is spatially. Something moves. If nothing moves, it's very difficult to tell that there's time. You'll always have something moving. Your heart will be moving, or something will be moving that will display time to you. So space is really the playground for time. Crystal wants to know if there are places of punishment because of karma. Is time there also? Of course. Don't you get punished? You get sick or something, right? And there's time. Are you asking if there's an eternal hell? There's no eternal hell. There's actually no eternal place in the entire external world. The only eternal thing is the experiencer. And it's only when the experiencer experiences the experiencer that it exists in an eternal situation. But within that eternality, it's not a blank moment. It's a ever adjusting eternality. Right. No moments don't create time. Time is the moment. Time is the moment. Time is the thing that allows moments to exist. So if anything, flip it around. Time creates moments. Time gone. Tim, you know Melissa. Send her a private message or something. Your mind will be blown. The person right below you on this chat, Melissa, you know her. All right, going back to this, Maitreya replied, time is the tool of the original person, a spiritual substance composed of his own power, which facilitates the increasing enjoyment of bliss. Time itself has no definite or perceivable form. It can only be experienced by the effect it has to cause changes. This is the second thing about time. The second part of the definition of time. Time itself is nothing really. Time itself has no definite or perceivable form. It's not something in itself. It is only experienced by its effect. Like time is not something with quality. It has no form, no color, no smell. It has no shape. It has no feeling, happiness, sadness. There's nothing to time itself. It's not something that you ever experience. You don't experience time, but you experience the effect of time. That's what he's saying right now. So if you give a definition of time, you can't really define it in any way except for the thing that it does. It can only be experienced by the effect that it has, and the effect is to cause changes. So time is the thing that facilitates change. That's interesting, Samantha. This describes how time pertains to the original person. It's a time pertains to the original, to consciousness. So it's also going to pertain to God. But Vidura also wants to know how time pertains to the external universe, so Maitreya now explains that. So time is intrinsic part of consciousness. It's not just something that happens in the external world. It's an intrinsic part of consciousness. But Vidura also wants to know how it affects the extrinsic world. So Maitreya explains time's effect on the universe begins when it causes the unmanifest to evolve an existence distinct and separate from the master. So if you now refer back to what you previously heard about how Vishnu is sleeping, Maya is sleeping. Vishnu wakes up and feels lonely, so wants to wake up Maya. So wakes up Maya, and then they make love. And the transmission, the substance transmitted into Maya by that act is time. Remember that story? He puts the power of time into Maya, which is just the basic structure of things, and that causes Maya to become pregnant and start developing stuff inside of her. So the first thing that develops is Avyakta. So what Maitreya is saying, the beginning of time acting on the world is the development of the Avyakta. The Avyakta is the unmanifest potential. The unmanifest potential of the world wakes up, which means the eternal inclination to action. And it has swabhava, a specific inclination to specific activity of conscious beings that he puts, along with time, he puts them into Maya. So Maitreya explained that time's effect on the first effect of time is to cause the unmanifest, the Avyakta, to evolve the Ahankar. The universe exists before, during, and after its relationship with time. So Maya or Prakriti exists before, during, and after its relationship with time. Before and after time's effect, the universe is unmanifest and potential. So that's why it's called Avyakta. During its time's effect, the universe is manifest and kinetic. So time exists outside the universe. That's why you can have a before, middle, and after. Time exists in consciousness. And the external universe is within it. When time is not acting on the universe, then the universe is just a potential energy. And when it's acting on the universe, then it becomes an active energy. These states change cyclically, Maitreya says, as the master applies the energy of time to the unmanifest universe. So you get it? So the before, middle, and after is a cyclic thing. So the after is another before. So there'll be consciousness will be applied, not applied to the external world. The external world is unmanifest, and time is not affecting it. Consciousness is applied to the external world. That means time is applied to it, becomes active and real. Consciousness is not applied later, goes away from it, then it becomes potential or unreal. And it comes back. It's in a cycle, just like day and night. Yes. It's going to get cooler and cooler, Samantha, because one thing is building on the next, and you're going to be able to understand. Like people who are just coming in now, they'll be a little bit lost. It'll be like, wow, this is overwhelming. But if those of you that are like in here for this, how many months we've been doing this, you're getting more and more foundation. And then each time Bhagavatam comes back and refers to something in the past, things start developing their connections much more, and you get to understand more and more stuff, and it gets more and more interesting. Time is therefore the agent that takes things in and out of manifest existence. It takes things out of existence to three extents. The destruction of specific qualities is one. This is actually, Maitreya is giving you a brief explanation of the types of destruction. Taking things into existence is creativity. Taking things out of existence is destruction. And Maitreya says there's three destructions. Or she says to three extents things are things get destroyed to three extents. So the first extent is the destruction of specific qualities. That the second extent is destruction of objects, and the third is the destruction of time itself, which means like the removal of time itself. So Maitreya is saying destruction is something that happens all the time in existence, but to three different levels. The first thing he calls it the destruction of qualities, and he specifies what he means here. He says this is the thing that constantly erodes the qualities of things. So there's a constant erosive force in time, because like somebody said earlier, forget who it was, Paul, I think, or maybe it was Paul. Yeah, Paul. Destruction is kind of like part of the creative process. So you're going to be eroding certain things so that you can recycle the materials to create new things. So there's this constant force going on. Every moment gets eroded to become the next moment. That's one kind of effect that time has. Time causes destruction as well as creation, and one effect of time's destruction is this constant erosion of things. Then the second thing is the destruction of objects itself. It's not just the qualities of the objects, but the object itself. So for example, if you can relate this to your body as well. I used to have light brown hair. I used to be 3 feet tall. I used to be, I was a kid. I used to have puffy cheeks, and now that's gone. So that's the first type of times. God, yeah. A lot of things have changed. So that's the first effect of time. It's destroying certain qualities of the object, but the object itself perseveres. Just the qualities of the object change. That's the first level of destruction. And then, Shivaram, come on. Actually, I can forgive you for that, because it's your first time hearing this, so you're going to miss 90% of the stuff. But we just said the way that Maitreya defined time was that it's the power of consciousness, and it's the power of the Supreme Person, Bhagavan. And the reason for it is that if you don't have time, you get bored. And so for the sake of experiencing Ananda, consciousness manifests time. And then he explains how it manifests in the external world. Okay, so the destruction of qualities of an object, and then there's a deeper kind of destruction. You destroy the object itself. That would be like you die. So the destruction of objects destroys not only the qualities, but the object possessing the qualities. And then the third level of destruction is the destruction of time. It annihilates all the objects. Time itself ceases to be active, and the entire universe dissolves into an unmanifest singularity. So you get three depths. Time is constantly erasing or changing the qualities of an object, but after a while it also destroys the object, but then there's other objects to take its place. But after a while, time destroys all the objects. Okay? All right, so we're going to stop there for today. You throw a few more questions if you want. The next topic for tomorrow is going to be how... Now, he briefly talked about the 3 ways that time destroys things. Now he's going to talk about the way that time brings things into being. And he's going to describe it as having 10 stages. So he said he gave 3 stages of destruction, and he's going to give 10 stages of creation. Yes, Yellow Crystal Warrior. We're expansions of Krishna experiencing time, and Krishna is also experiencing time. No, actually, what do you mean experiencing time? You don't experience time. Time is not a part of your experience, but time is the thing which is causing the things that you experience. Like I just experienced a sound, like somebody closing a door. So I didn't experience time, but time caused the door to move and fall into the latch and make that sound. So you don't experience time. That's what Maitreya said. Maitreya said, time has no qualities to experience, but it's only experienced by its effect on other things. All right, guys, thank you very much. Let me see. Yeah, I don't know why. Apparently, my shirt is like glowing neon white, but some kind of magical effect happened today with the cameras or the lights. I don't really know. It's not confusing, Raghuvar. You should, if it's confusing to you, then it's unnecessarily complicated. You're unnecessarily complicating it. It's just real simple. Consciousness experiences things, and it gets bored with the thing it's experiencing, so it wants a new thing. That's time. Time is the ability to change one thing into another. Right? It's not complicated at all. All right, Prakriti. We'll do beauty lessons on a separate stream. All right, guys. Haribol.